لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم يقولون آمنا به كل من عند ربنا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد. إن الذين كفروا لن تغني عنهم أموالهم ولا أولادهم من الله شيئا وأولئك هم وقود النار. كدأب آل فرعون الذين كذبوا بآياتنا فأخذهم الله بذنوبهم والله شديد العقاب. قل للذين كفروا ستغلبون وتحشرون إلى جهنم وبئس المهاد. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
مہدی ہاتھ کو آگے بلاؤ جلدی جاؤ. محمد والے محمد صلوات. بات آگے بڑھ جائیے. ہاتھ آ جاؤ. آپ لوگ سے میرے حسین میری آگوش میں آ جائے میرے گود میں آ جائے. صحیح ہے. بر محمد والے محمد صلوات. عاشور کا سورج ہے قیامت کی گھڑی ہے. بھائی کا گلا کٹتا بہن دیکھ رہی ہے. مقتل میں کسی ماں کی صدا گونج رہی ہے. آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا. آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا. میرے لیے لال تو اصغر کی طرح ہے. گودی میری گہوار ہے بستر کی طرح ہے. اس دھوپ میں دامن میرا چادر کی طرح ہے. آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا. آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا. میں ماں ہوں میرا دل نہیں سینے میں سنبھلتا. نازک یہ بدن تیرا یہ جلتا ہوا صحرا. اور اس پہ ستم یہ کہ تو رہ گیا پیاسا. آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا. آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا. آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا. میں گود میں لے لوں تجھے سینے سے لگا لوں. سینے پہ سکینہ کی طرح تجھ کو سلا لوں. سینے پہ تیرے تیر میں پلکوں سے نکالوں، آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، آ کر میرے زانوں پہ جو سو جا تھے بیٹا، چکی کی مشقت سے بھی پہلو نہیں بدلا، اب کیسے تجھے چھوڑ دوں مقتل میں اکیلا، آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، میری بھی تو اولاد ہے تو بھی تو پدر ہے، اولاد کا غم کیا ہے یہ تجھ کو بھی خبر ہے، غم بچے کا سہ جائے یہ کس ماں کا جگر ہے، آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، تو لیٹ گیا تھا کہ تو اس جلتی زمیں پہ، یہ کیف کا لہو تو نے ملا روح ہنسی پر، منہ خار پہ سولال تیری ماں ہے یہیں پر، آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، جو دل پہ تیرے گزری میں سب دیکھ رہی تھی، جو دل پہ تیرے گزری میں سب دیکھ رہی تھی، ہر لاش اٹھانے میں تیرے ساتھ گئی تھی، اب بات وہ کہتی ہوں جو بچپن میں کہی تھی، آئے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، نوحے میں बयां कैसे कर सरवर रेहां, पढ़ सकता नहीं कोई भी ये दर्द का कुरान। माँ कहती रह जाए दिल में मेरे अरमान, आए मेरे हुसैन मेरी गोद में आजा, आजा मेरे बच्चे मेरी आगोश में आजा, आजा मेरे बच्चे मेरी आगोश में आजा। बरसलवात मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद। नहीं
Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Can I request all the brothers who are sitting here, can you stand up and please come closer? Everyone, especially if you're elderly, it's okay on the chairs or on the wall. Thank you very much. Everyone, can you please step up, please? Thank you. Yeah, come as closer as possible. We are expecting a big crowd today. So, inshallah, the people who come later, they should be okay. Yeah, you can please, yes, all the way up here. If you guys can. Yeah, please, everybody can come up. Shukran. Allah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. عن الإمام الحسين عليه السلام أنه قال في رسالة له: إني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما، وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي، أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. For the love of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. For the love of Ali al-Akbar, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. And for the love of Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salam, and to hasten his reappearance, let us make a loud salawat. As we approach the day of Ashura, the day in which the greatest tragedy occurred, as we approach this day with sadness, with grief, with regret to what took place upon Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the grandson of Rasulullah, with regret to what took place to the Sabayah, to the granddaughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, from the prevention of water to the beheading of the men, to the killing of Ali al-Asghar, to burning down the tents, to the journey to Sham, to entering the palace of Yazid. As we approach all of this, it is important for us to remind ourselves of the purpose of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Before our majalis end and before the season ends, it is important for us to remind ourselves one more time of what the purpose of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's mission. The reasons behind his sacrifice. The reason that led him to leave Medina and go to Mecca and from there head towards Karbala. The values that he fought for on that day. It is important for us to look at the achievements of the day of Ashura, to look at the achievements of the journey of Karbala. And it's also important for us to reflect about our role in the journey of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. The story of Karbala began 1400 years ago, but the story continues till this day. And every single one of us here has a role in that story. A role to extend the legacy of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. And it's our duty to execute that role properly. So inshallah, with the few minutes that we have today in this shortened lecture, for us to focus upon the majalis and the Nohas more today, it is important for us to remind ourselves before the ending of this beautiful season that gets us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was not the only person to revolt against the Umayyads. In fact, there were other people that revolted against Yazid, that revolted against Bani Umayyah. For example, Abdullah ibn Zubayr was a man that revolted against Bani Umayyah. He refused to give allegiance to Yazid. The same thing as Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam al-Hussein refused to give allegiance to Yazid. Abdullah ibn Zubayr refused to give allegiance. In fact, he revolted. He had a whole revolution against Yazid until he was forced to retreat in Mecca. And he went and hid inside the Kaaba. You know what the Umayyads did? They brought a catapult. They put it outside Masjid al-Haram and they struck the Kaaba while he was inside the Kaaba. Parts of the Kaaba collapsed, the Kaaba was on fire, and he died. But how many of us here have heard the story of Abdullah ibn Zubayr? Not many. Why? Because the purpose of Abdullah ibn Zubayr was not for you and I. The purpose of Abdullah ibn Zubayr was not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of this man was to ascend to the throne, was to hold on to power, was to become the caliph, for the purpose of becoming the caliph, no more, no less. So at that point, there is no difference between this man and Yazid. Just a change of faces. And that is why not only did Abdullah ibn Zubayr fail to have Yazid's regime collapse, but he also failed to mark his legacy in history, to make a change in history. Because his purpose was not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His purpose was for something else, for his own good. So there were others who revolted. The revolt against Yazid was not a unique thing to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. But what was unique about Abi Abdullah al-Hussein is that everything he did, from the moment he left Mecca to the moment that he died, was not for his own sake. Tell me, what man would face an army of 30,000 people when you only have 72 people? Tell me, which man would do that? Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam from the battle of Karbala did not benefit anything in this world. Think about it strategically. Which man would face an army of 30,000 people when you have an army of 72 men? And some of them were children. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the purpose of his mission was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says that in a letter that he sent to his brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. He says, إني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. I did not come out without a purpose. I did not come out to deceive people, nor for corruption, nor to oppress people. I have come out seeking reform within the ummah of my prophet, of my grandfather. I want to enjoin righteousness and refute evil. That was the mission of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. The goal of Abi Abdullah was not for himself. The goal was for Islam. He was worried about others. He was worried that other people will not know Salah in its true form. He was worried that other people will not know Ibadah, would not know Allah, would not know the Prophet as they were. The Imam revolted after years and years of corruption, after years of impiety, after years of misguiding people. That's what the Umayyads did. They misguided people. They were corrupt, ruling in the name of Islam. And at that point, Islam was about to crumble. And that is why the Imam began his revolution. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The Imam fought for Islam to remain. Do you know what Muawiyah used to say when he would hear the adhan? When Muawiyah would hear the Prophet's name in the adhan, when he would hear Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, do you know what Muawiyah would say? He would say defnan defna, meaning that my goal is to bury this name, bury it. No more mentioning of Muhammad in history. That was his goal. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi was dead at the time, but he's still saying defnan defna. He still wants to bury the name of Muhammad from history. And this man is ruling in the name of Islam. You see, Bani Umayyah always hated Bani Hashim. They were always jealous of Bani Hashim. The father of Muawiyah, Abu Sufyan, he fought the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam until the last minute, until Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered Mecca victoriously. He fought the Prophet. His wife Hind, we all know Hind. What did Hind do? She literally ate the liver of the Prophet's uncle. Because her family, her father, her uncles all fought against Islam. Hamza killed them in the wars. So she took revenge. She asked that man Wahshi to kill Hamza. And she literally ate the liver of Hamza. That was the mother of Muawiyah. That was the grandmother of Yazid. So a man who fought against Islam, his wife fought against Islam. Her son used to say defnan defna. Now the grandson is coming to rule in the name of Islam. Does that work? When Bani Umayyah realized that they cannot defeat Islam from the outside, their new tactic was to defeat Islam from the inside. When Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam's caravan entered Sham, the woman, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, do you know what Yazid said? He said a few verses of poetry. He said, ليت أشياخي ببدر شهدوا جزع الخزرج من وقع الأسل قد قتلنا القرم من ساداتكم وعدلنا ميل بدر فاعتدل فأهلوا واستهلوا فرحا ثم قالوا يا يزيد لا تسل لست من خندف إن لم أنتقم من بني أحمد ما كان فعل. And then he says لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل. The man who is ruling in the name of Islam says, I wish my ancestors who were killed in Badr, who were fighting against Islam, were alive to witness what I have done, to see how I have taken revenge for them. I killed the master of Bani Hashim, so be happy and be joyful. And then he says, Bani Hashim did all of this to rule. For there was no messenger from Allah, and there was no wahi from Allah. This man who is ruling in the name of Islam is saying there was no prophet from Allah. This was all a lie to deceive people. This was the person, this was the agenda that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was fighting against on the day of Ashura. And that is why we see Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that is why we see Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam say, وَيَزِيدٌ فاسق فاجر شارب للخمر قاتل النفس المحترمة معلن بالفسق والفجور مثلي لا يبايع مثله. Yazid is a hypocrite, a drunkard, a murderer who is proud of his sins, of his actions. Someone like me does not give allegiance to someone like him. If you have a man like Yazid who does not believe in Allah, who does not believe in the Prophet, who has every single hatred against Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam, who is a drunkard, who is a murderer, ruling in the name of Islam, how do you expect Islam to survive? So Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam had to make that stand. He had to mark history and make that stand. For us, when to look back, we can see that there was a stand against that man. Meaning that man did not represent Islam. That was the mission of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. On the day of Ashura, Al-Imam al-Hussein fought for human liberty. You know, the word liberty is thrown around these days. You know, a lot of meanings. The Supreme Court is fighting over the word liberty. What does it include? What does it not include? But Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam fought for true liberty, for true human freedom. Do you know how the Umayyads used to treat people? The Umayyads used to treat people as slaves. Literally as slaves. Now you might be saying I'm exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. They literally used to treat people as slaves. Yazid, when he ascended to the throne, he sent a man by the name of Muslim ibn Aqaba. He sent that man to Medina to gain allegiance from people. For the people of Medina to say that we give allegiance to Yazid as our new ruler. Bay'ah. This man killed thousands upon thousands of people in Masjid Rasulullah for refusing to give bay'ah. That's number one. And number two, when he fear-mongered enough for people to sit down and give allegiance, you know what they gave allegiance for? They said that we give allegiance to Yazid for our blood, our soul, and our money. They gave their blood, their money, and their soul to Yazid. Isn't that slavery? They literally told Yazid, you now own us. My money, my life, my soul is all for you. That's how the Umayyads treated people. Abdullah ibn Umar. Umar ibn al-Khattab had a son by the name of Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdullah ibn Umar went to give allegiance to Yazid. He was living in Hijaz. So he went to the governor of Yazid in Hijaz to give allegiance. His governor, Yazid's governor in Hijaz, was by a man by the name of Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Al-Hajjaj was known to shed blood as if it was nothing. You know how some people kill flies? You know when a mosquito comes and you kill it? Al-Hajjaj used to kill people like that. For any reason he would kill people. He literally had a mountain of skulls. That was Al-Hajjaj. Al-Hajjaj received Abdullah ibn Umar. Now Abdullah ibn Umar, he comes in and he tells him, I heard the Prophet say, Man mat وليس في عنقه بيعة لإمام زمانه مات ميتة جاهلية. I have heard the Prophet say, he who dies without giving allegiance to the Imam of his time dies the death of Jahiliyyah, as if Islam didn't existed for that man. So please give me your hand so I can shake your hand and give you allegiance and give Yazid allegiance. You know what he responds? He tells him, I'm sorry, my hands are a little bit busy right now. But here's my feet. You can shake my feet and give allegiance to my feet. That's how the Umayyads used to treat people. Brothers and sisters, رحم الله من ذكر القائم فقام. If we can come a little bit closer. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. صل على محمد وآل محمد. So Abdullah ibn Umar After Al-Hajjaj gives him his feet, tells him, you know, you can shake with my feet to give allegiance. He tells him, are you mocking me? I'm coming here respecting you, coming to give you allegiance, to give Yazid allegiance, and you are coming here and giving you your feet? He tells him, the only reason why you came to my palace and give allegiance is because you saw what we did to Abdullah ibn Zubayr after they killed him in the middle of the Kaaba. That's the only reason why you're here. Where was this hadith when you refused to give allegiance to Ali ibn Abi Talib? Wasn't he the Imam of your time? Why didn't you give him allegiance? Where was this hadith? Weren't you afraid of dying and dying a death of Jahiliyyah? The only reason you're here is because you're scared for your life. That's how Bani Umayyah used to treat people. They used to literally treat them like slaves. And that is why Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura, he looks at the army of Yazid and he tells them, وَيْلَكُمْ يَا شِيعَةَ أَبَا سُفْيَانَ إِن لَمْ يَكُنْ لَكُمْ دِينٌ وَكُنْتُمْ لَا تَخَافُونَ الْمَعَادِ فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. O the followers of Abi Sufyan, if you are not scared of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are not scared of the hereafter, at least be free in this world. Don't be slaves to that man. You guys are fighting for money. You guys are fighting because you are enslaved to that man. The least you can do is live free in this world. So Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura fought for human liberty, fought for freedom, because he valued the human being. And his system was based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's system. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's system? All people are treated equally. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most pious of you are the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't matter what race you come from. It doesn't matter who you are. Human freedom, equality. 1400 years before any declaration of equality. 1400 years before Black Lives Matter. 1400 years before the Me Too movement. 1400 years before any of these movements, before any of these movements that fought for freedom, for liberty, for equality. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam fought for that on the day of Ashura. One of the companions of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, as we all know, was a man by the name of John. John was a former slave and he was also a black man. But he chose to come and fight with Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Why? Because Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam fought for equality. He fought against racism. He fought for human decency, for equality, for human freedom. All of these terms that we started hearing in the past 50, 60, 70 years, especially with the UN declaration of it, UN declaration in the 1950s, after World War II. That's when we started hearing of these terms. But Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam used to fight for all of these on the day of Ashura. When the companions of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam died, and the Ahlulbayt died on the day of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein did not walk and go and sit down and grieve to all of them. There were 72 of them. The Imam only went and sat down and grieved with a few of them. Not because they're not important, but the Imam wanted to highlight a few of them. One of them was Ali al-Akbar. One of them was Al-Abbas. And one of them was John. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam went to John, crying, weeping over John. And he prayed for John. And he told him that at the end of the day, on the day of judgment, you will be with me and you will be with the Prophet. Because the Imam, at a time of tribalism, at a time of racism, and racism still exists to this very day, and it's a chronic disease within our communities, the Muslim community before other communities. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam wanted to make that stand. That this man is as equal as every other man. In fact, this man was a free man. This former slave was the true free man because he fought for dignity. He fought for equality. The other side, they were the ones that enslaved themselves to the army of Yazid, to the rule of Yazid, to the corruption of Yazid. And that's why he tells them, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. At least be free in this world. Another example can be seen in the example of Wahab. Wahab was a recent revert into Islam. He was a recent revert. He met Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam when Imam al-Hussein was heading towards Karbala. He became a Muslim at the hands of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, and after a few days he fought under the banner of Abi Abdullah. Why? Because Imam al-Hussein believed in equality. It doesn't matter. You are a Muslim. You are a believer. The rest doesn't matter. You are a human. The rest doesn't matter. He was fighting against a regime that treated people as if they were animals. People nowadays treat their dogs, their cats, their pets, in a humane way. Yazid did not treat his subjects the way that we treat our pets. So that was the reason. That was one of the things that Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam fought against. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. On the day of Ashura, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam fought for every single Islamic value out there. On the day of Ashura, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam fought against every immoral act out there. On the day of Ashura, Hussein taught us to fight against hypocrisy, against corruption, against indecency, against inequality, against racism, against hatred, against bigotry. Hussein on the day of Ashura taught us to be proud of our values. The values that you and you and you and you and all of us and myself hold. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam taught us it is better for us to fight for our values in this world and die than to live a life without dignity, a life without values. He taught us that a life without principles, without values, is worthless. What's the point of living if you don't have any values? What's the point of living if you don't have any principles? That was the stance of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura. And through what he did, and through that sacrifice is the reason why we are all gathered here. The love for the Ahlulbayt, prayer without Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and the sacrifice that he did on the day of Ashura, we wouldn't know how to pray. We wouldn't know who the Prophet was. We wouldn't know what Hajj is, what fasting is. Because Bani Umayyah at every single instance wanted to blur their lines. They wanted to destruct Islam one brick at a time, one step at a time, one foundation at a time. And that was the reason why Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam fought on the day of Karbala. Everything good that we know about our religion, every good act that we do in the name of Islam is because of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. The Prophet spent 23 years to build the foundation of Islam, to cement the underpinnings of Islam, until the day of Ghadir, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when Jibreel came down with the verse, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم ورضيت لكم الإسلام وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. This day I have perfected you your religion and completed my blessings upon you and have approved Islam as a religion for you. After 23 years, Islam was complete. But when Bani Umayyah ascended, they were aiming to destruct Islam. So Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, his fight was to protect the underpinnings of Islam, the foundation of Islam, because that was under attack. And that is why they say, Al-Islam Muhammadiyul Wujud, Husayniyul Baqa. Islam exists because of Prophet Muhammad, was created because of Prophet Muhammad, but exists today because of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, because of his sacrifice. That is why Imam Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi told Amir al-Mu'mineen, he told him, إنني قاتلت على التنزيل وأنت يا علي تقاتل على التأويل. I fought for revelation of the Quran. They wanted to misguide people, but Imam al-Hussein had to continue the legacy of his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and fight for the correct interpretation of the Holy Quran, for the correct interpretation of Islam. You see what ISIS does, what ISIS did, what Al-Qaeda did, all of these narrations that they based their ideals and ideology upon are from Bani Umayyah. All of these narrations stem from Bani Umayyah when you trace it back in history. That was their version of Islam. And Imam al-Hussein had a different version of Islam, the correct, the pure version of Islam. Bani Umayyah wanted to blur the lines, and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam fought to keep those lines very clear. So everything that has survived in Islam is because of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers and sisters, I know it's a little, crammed up already, but if we can all come a little bit closer. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Let us do one loud salawat for the love of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam and what he sacrificed on the day of Karbala. Sallu ala. So brothers and sisters, now that we know that Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam fought for these beautiful values on the day of Ashura, he fought against corruption, against indecency, against hatred, against bigotry on the day of Ashura. And he fought for the survival of Islam because Islam was on the verge of collapsing, of crumbling. The true identity of Islam was about to be lost. Now that we know all of that, I ask you a question. What is my role? What is your role? What is your role? What is our role as a society in this mission? Did Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam fight the fight? Did Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam sacrifice all of this for the sake Of nothing? Do we have a role in all of this? Do we have a role? We have a role. We have a role in all of this. Now, alhamdulillah, all of us here, these beautiful faces, we've all had the privilege, the honor of coming and attending the majlis of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. We've learned, we've cried, we've mourned, and all of us to a certain degree have gotten closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the past few days by attending the majlis of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. And what brought us here is the love of Abi Abdullah. And what got us closer to Allah is the love of Abi Abdullah, because by coming here for the love of Abi Abdullah, we got closer to Allah by praying together, by learning together. Isn't that true? So alhamdulillah, all of us have that seed within us, the seed of the love for the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. But I ask you this, do we have true love for Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam? We mourned, we cried, we did latmiya, we did noha. But brothers and sisters, true love for Abi Abdullah al-Hussein extends beyond these 10 days. True love for Abi Abdullah al-Hussein extends beyond tomorrow. After the majalis of Abi Abdullah are done, is when the true love of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam appears. That's when you know the true believers. It is the love that extends beyond wearing just black on the 10 days of Ashura. It is the love that extends beyond latmiyas, nohas and marsiyas. It is the love beyond just simply attending the majlis of Abi Abdullah. All of these are great steps. They're the first step to take. But true love is the love that illuminates our heart throughout the year. True love is the true love that establishes a moral compass that guides us throughout the year. It's the love that keeps us on the right track throughout the year. True love is that love that commands you to stand and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every single day, 5 times a day. True love is the love that commands us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every single day, on a daily basis. True love is the one that commands us to follow the values of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam on a daily basis. How can we claim to love Abi Abdullah? How can we claim to follow Abi Abdullah? How can we claim to be the Shi'as, the lovers of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, but we don't follow his values throughout the year? You see, and this might sound a little harsh, just because we're here, just because we're on the battlefield, metaphorically speaking, doesn't mean we're on the side of Hussein. How many people were in Karbala? Thousands of people were in Karbala. Only 72 were on the side of Hussein. Just because you're on the battlefield doesn't mean you're automatically with Abi Abdullah. A lot of people abandoned Abi Abdullah. A lot of people fought against Abi Abdullah. There was a man by the name of Harthama. This man came to Karbala with Umar ibn Sa'd. As soon as he enters the land of Karbala, he remembers. He remembers an incident that happened 20 years ago. He goes towards Abi Abdullah. he sits next to Abi Abdullah. He tells him, 20 years ago, I was with your father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. We passed through the land of Karbala. We prayed here. And Imam Ali held the soil of Karbala and said, there will be a side that fights on this land that will go directly to heaven. So Imam al-Hussein smiles. He tells him, so will you be joining me? He tells him, no. I won't be fighting against you either. I'm just going to leave because I have kids. Imagine being on the battlefield and not fighting with Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imagine the lack of tawfiq. So being on the battlefield doesn't necessarily mean that we're on the side of Hussein. Being on the battlefield means that we follow. Being on the side of Hussein means that we follow what Imam al-Hussein ordered, what Imam al-Hussein fought for. And that entails many things. It entails on a personal level that we become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That every single day of our life we aim to be closer to Allah. That no day passes by without self-accountability. That no day passes by without reflecting upon our actions, upon our deeds, thinking about how to become better people. It entails being a good person with good ethics, with a moral compass, being kind to our family members, being kind to our wives, being kind to our husbands, being kind to our children, being kind to our parents, to our neighbors, to our co-workers. If you are a man that abuses your wife, your children at home, you're not on the side of Abi Abdullah. The men who abused the women on Karbala were on the other side. Unfortunately, we have that problem within our communities. If you are a man that abandons prayer, that is careless, the other side was the side that abandoned prayer. Now, I'm not trying to put anyone down. We all, life is challenging. And sometimes a moment of anger, a moment of not thinking, a moment of irrationality, temptations, desires, they take us away. And sometimes we fall into these pitfalls. But brothers and sisters, the least we can do is try. You are in the majlis of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Deep down, tell yourself, let us all tell ourselves, oh Abi Abdullah, from this moment, I promise you, oh Allah, that I will try my best to become a better human being. That I will try my best to have a better connection with you. That's on an individual level. On a communal level, it entails being a good member of society. As much as we have responsibility towards ourselves, we also have a responsibility towards our community. The person sitting next to you, you have a responsibility towards that person, whether you like it or not, as much as you have a responsibility to yourself. That is what Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam taught us. We all of you here, all of us have a responsibility that in the next 10 years, this place will still exist. That this place will only grow. That the next generation will come here. If you as a parent do not dedicate your time and come to this masjid and volunteer in this masjid and help your community, where do you think your kids will be in 10 years? Do you think they'll be volunteering in the masjid? I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's not going to happen. If you want your kid to be on the right path, you as a parent have to be on the right path. It means that we give back to our community. If you have money, give money. If you don't have money, it doesn't mean that you just don't do anything. It means that if you have knowledge, you come and you spread your knowledge in the Sunday school. If you have extra time, you see what the masjid needs. What chores are there to do to make this masjid process as smoothly as possible? And you volunteer your time. If you have extra time, you volunteer your time. If you have connections and you know a younger kid that wants to become successful, you connect that person, that kid, with the connections that you have. You become a mentor to the kids here. And we have to all try our best to be responsible members of society. And even for the young ones, our responsibility, your responsibility as young ones, is to attend, is to come, is to volunteer. Because believe it or not, the only place that will have your back at the end of the day are those people here. They're your community. They're the ones that have your values. They're the ones that believe in you. They're the ones that share your values, that know your family, that know you, that trust in you. No matter what happens, this place will have your back. But that takes effort. That takes a whole society. So we all, if we claim to be on the path of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, we have to fight for others, just like how Abi Abdullah al-Hussein fought for others. And that means we fight for our community. And lastly, brothers and sisters, before we move on to the musibah, is we have a responsibility to the Imam of our time. Who's the Imam of our time? Al-Imam al-Hujjah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. How many days go by? And I'm talking to myself as well. How many days go by? How many months go by? How many years? How many decades for some people? Without a single thought that I have an Imam, a living, present Imam in this dunya. How many of us sit down and reflect upon that reality? How many of us wonder what the Imam is doing at this point? We claim to be believers. We claim to believe in the Imam. But how many of us truly think of the Imam? How many of us truly believe in the Imam and think about him on a daily basis, or at least a weekly basis? The least we can do is recite Dua al-Nudba on Fridays. The least we can do is when we recite Dua al-Faraj, is to actually reflect upon the words when we say Allahumma kulli waliyika, oh Allah, be with your successor. With Imam al-Hujjah, truly mean it. The least we can do is recite Dua al-Ahad and think about the words. Have a connection with the Imam. Let's have a connection with the Imam. The Imam cares for us. The Imam cares for us. The narrations say that at the end of the day, the Imam will see our actions and he will be burdened if some of us go astray. Don't hurt the heart. Don't hurt the Imam. If you don't care for yourself, think about the Imam. The Imam cares for you. The Imam loves you. The least we can do is make dua for him, is to think of him, is to prepare ourselves for him mentally and physically. If the Imam reappears tomorrow, are we ready? We're the lovers of Abi Abdullah. We always say, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuza fawzan azima. We wish we were with you, for we will have won. We would have been victorious. Now we might have the opportunity to fight under the banner of Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Faraja. Are we ready? The answer needs to be yes. Every single one of us needs to be ready. You know, there's this very sad narration. Al-Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, you know, a man asks him, he tells him, there's so many Shi'as around the world these days. So many believers. When is the Mahdi going to come? He tells him, how many people? He tells him, I can't even count. Can you count how many Shi'as there are today? Can't count. In the millions. Everywhere you go, you see a Shia. He tells him the Imam will reappear when the 313 number is achieved. Meaning there's not 313 true Shias. Isn't that a sad reality? Across the world, there's not 313 of us that are ready for the Imam. On this day, at these moments, the Imam is mourning. As much as you and I are sad, the Imam is sadder. Today, by us coming here and commemorating the legacy of Abi Abdullah, we are coming here. Who is the owner of this aza? It's Imam al-Mahdi. We are giving our condolences to the Imam. Offering our condolences to the Imam in this majlis is a form of remembering. So keep it in mind. Every time you come to this place, every time you come to worship, do it with the intention of getting closer to Allah and getting closer to the Imam. Because it's a form of remembering, a form of being dedicated, a form of being ready for the Imam. Have that intention. On this night, Al-Imam al-Hujjah is mourning, is sad, is thinking about the tragedy of Karbala. Tonight, brothers and sisters, is the night of Ali al-Akbar, the young man who gave his life, who gave his soul at a youthful age to Islam, to protect his religion, to protect everything. If we can turn off the lights, brothers and sisters. Ali al-Akbar, Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would describe him saying, أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسوله. Ali al-Akbar sounded, looked and acted like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. When he wanted permission from the Imam to enter the battlefield, Al-Imam al-Hussein was deeply saddened. He said, he raised his hand, he said, Allahumma ishhad ala ha'ula'i al-qawm فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسولك. كنا إذا اشتقنا إلى رسولك نظرنا إلى وجهه. Oh Allah, be a witness to what these people are doing. Look at what they're doing to Ali al-Akbar, the person who reminded us of Rasulullah every time we wanted to remember Rasulullah. Every time we missed Rasulullah, we looked at Ali al-Akbar. And then he looks at Umar ibn Sa'd and he tells him, قطع الله رحمك كما قطعت رحمي. May Allah cut your kinship the way that you cut my kinship, the way you killed my son. Ali al-Akbar enters the battle bravely. Brothers and sisters, today is the day we cry. Today is the day that you find that tear within the bottom of your heart. You try your best to cry. Ali al-Akbar enters the battle and he fights bravely. Layla, his mother, doesn't have the heart to watch Ali al-Akbar fight. So she looks at the face of Abi Abdullah, and Abi Abdullah is looking. If Abi Abdullah is smiling, then she knows that he is killing the enemies. If Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is sad, she knows that he's in a difficult position. So the Imam all of a sudden is sad. He looks worried. He tells him, what is happening? He tells her, a strong man has come out to fight Ali al-Akbar. Go to your tent and pray for the prayer of a mother is accepted. She goes to her tent and she says, Allahumma bi'atashi Abi Abdullah. Ilahi بغربتي أبي عبد الله. Oh Allah, for the sake of the loneliness, for the sake of the thirst of Abi Abdullah, يا راد يوسف إلى يعقوب رد لي ولدي علي. Oh, you who returned Yaqub, returned Ali al-Akbar to me. Oh, you who returned Yusuf to Yaqub, return my son Ali to me. Ali al-Akbar was able to kill the man and he returned back to the tents. He goes to his mother for one last bid, farewell. He goes back. Before he goes back, he heads to his father. He tells him, oh father, Ya Abatah, I am thirsty. I don't have the means to fight. I'm weak. I need water. The Imam cries. He tells him, wait for a few moments and your grandfather will quench your thirst. يا ابويا شربت مي الكبدي اتقوى وارد للميدان وحدي. يا ابويا انفطر قلبي وحق جدي العطش والشمس والميدان والحر. He enters the battlefield saying, أنا علي بن الحسين بن علي نحن ورب البيت أولى بالنبي. تالله لا يحكم فينا ابن الدعي. I, Ali, the son of Hussein, we by the Lord of the house are closer to the Prophet. By Allah, this unjust man will not rule us while he is fighting the enemy of Allah. Comes from his back and strikes him with a sword on his head. Another strikes him with a spear. Another enemy takes advantage and hits him with another sword. Ali al-Akbar takes the hits from left and right. He leans down and he puts his head on the horse, on the head of his horse. The blood of Ali al-Akbar begins to cover the eyes of the horse. Instead of going back to the tent, the horse begins to run towards the enemies. They hit him left and right until he falls to the ground. As soon as he falls to the ground, he says, عليك مني السلام يا أبا عبد الله. Oh, Abi Abdullah, I bid you farewell. The Imam rushes to him. They disperse amongst the Imam. Al-Imam al-Hussein. He goes and he sees his son, his own blood, on the ground, with blood covering his face, his body. Every single part of his body is hurt. He tells his father, لَقَدْ سَقَانِي جَدِّي بِكَأْسِهِ الْأَوْفَى شَرْبَةً لَا أَظْمَأُ بَعْدَهَا أَبَدًا. "O Father, my grandfather came to me and quenched my thirst with a drink that I will never be thirsty for the rest of my life." And he says that he has a cup for you as well. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, brothers and sisters, I want you to think of this right now. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam puts his cheeks on the cheeks of Ali al-Akbar. Imagine a father losing his son. He says, "على الدنيا بعدك العفا ما أجرأ هؤلاء على الرحمن وعلى انتهاك حرمة الرسول." Life is worthless without you. How rude are these people to Allah and to the Prophet. During these moments, Ali al-Akbar passes away. رحم الله من نادى وعليا ومظلوما وقتيلا. كأني بأبي عبد الله الحسين يقول: أريد أمسح جروحك واشم خدك واحط صدري على صدرك ووسدك. يا ابويا شوف لكن حرم جدك وجد زينب تصيح الله أكبر. He takes him to the tent. He has a hard time carrying Ali al-Akbar towards the tent. The women and the children see Ali al-Akbar. They begin to cry, "Wa aliyah, wa akbarah." He lays him down in the tent. Layla hugs Ali al-Akbar. His mother hugs him and she begins to cry. She lost her own son, how can she not? وكأني بها تقول تصيح: يا هالناس أنا الولد ربيته. تصيح: يا هالناس أنا الولد ربيته ومن صدر الحليب الصافي رضعته. كنت بالليل أسهر بالولا يمه أحط إيده على إيده وأحب نحره. أفز لمن أفز لمن يفز وانده لها يمه وكم مرة المهد للصبح حزيته. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. يا الله 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 يا أسمع السامعين يا أبصر الناظرين يا أحكم الحاكمين. Oh Allah, allow us to be one of those who shed a tear on Abi Abdullah. Allow us to be one of those who are the servants of Abi Abdullah. Allow us to be one of those who follow Abi Abdullah. Allow us to be one of those who serve our community, who try to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, protect our families, protect our elderly, heal those who need healness. Oh Allah, اللهم اشف مرضانا، اللهم داوي جرحانا، اللهم اغفر لنا وتب علينا وانصرنا بحق محمد وآل محمد. Brothers and sisters, let us read this beautiful ayah for those who need the dua. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أَمَّن One last time. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ Let us stand up in respect for our Imam, صاحب العصر والزمان. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه وفي كل وليا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا حتى وتمتعه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله